Hey there, welcome to the Harmolodics podcast. It's episode 1, and we thank you for joining us. And because it's episode 1, we're going to introduce ourselves. So hi, my name is Ben.
My name is Ryan.
And my name is Chris.
And we've been friends for about 10 years, and we've really gotten along because of our shared love of music, whether that be listening to it, learning about it, or making it ourselves. And here, Harmolodics is our opportunity to share our excitement with all of you. So we thank you for joining us here at episode 1. Today we're talking all about physical media in this day and age and beyond. Not just music, but mostly music. I think a great first question for you guys is, what kind of physical media do you have, and what do you think of it overall?
For music, at least, my primary form of physical media collecting is vinyl. You just get a huge version of the album cover just sitting on your shelf, and you get a disc in it that plays your favorite music at exceptional quality. I remember listening to one of my favorite albums, Discovery by Daft Punk, for the first time, and it felt like I was listening to it for the first time again. It's just such a unique experience, and it feels like you're really connecting with the music a lot more.
Physical media for me, it's always been a little bit of a love, you know? I'm a big vinyl guy. I don't have the world's biggest collection, but I always view physical media as a great way to support the artists and the people that I think do a good job. Obviously, vinyl, I have a fair amount of CDs as well. It's just a great way for me that I love it. It's just something fun about being able to tangibly hold it. So yeah, you know, it's something that I love to it's a way to show appreciation and show a little support for the artists that we love. Honestly, my main reason is it's the best way to support the artists that you love.
For me, I have around 300 vinyl records. That is primarily my physical media collection. I do have a few shelves of CDs, but I'm not actively seeking them out. I just kind of have them. It really is a way to support the artist that you like at this point in time. You have to buy in. Considering where we are in the musical landscape, that owning an album was once the only way to listen to it, now it's a sign of respect in some kind of way.
Especially in the streaming age, where we have the entirety of the history of recorded music at our fingertips, ready to look up at a moment's notice, hosted on servers that aren't ours, behind paywalls that don't guarantee us ownership. Like we're renting the music almost. I think physical media is just another way to kind of take ownership of the music that you have and the music that you love.
Well, here's a question for you guys. How often do you guys listen to your records?
Obviously, I'm in a bit of a stitch here. So given that I've moved and all recently, it's been a little bit. So I'm going to preface it this more of when I was living back at my old place and I had my record player actually there. My record player will make its way back down here eventually, but I'm just giving myself a little context here. I would say, because, you know, vinyls are such a process. They're delicate. They require care. They're not as convenient as like a CD. CDs, I would keep some in my car. I'd throw those on every now and then. Vinyls, you know, once a day, couple times a week is usually how I would treat my vinyls, you know. Because what good are they if you don't listen to them? I'm the type of person that's like, some people like to keep things sealed forever, and none of my vinyls are like particularly rare, so I really don't care if I'm opening them up, you know. What good is it if you don't listen?
Exactly. It's cool to collect the albums, but it's like the whole reason you're getting them is, you know, listen to them. You can listen to the albums that are there. They're not just display pieces. I'm also in a similar situation where I just moved, so I don't have my record player set up just yet, but I kind of treat it as more of a special occasion where I really only listen to vinyls around once a month, and I would listen to them with my buddies primarily. It was a great way for me to show them, you know, my music taste and what I loved about the music.
I mean, I definitely agree with that sort of special occasion mentality, because as warm of an experience in my heart it is to, you know, take a record out of its sleeve and put it on the turntable and align the needle. At the end of the day, I could just go on my phone and look up any album ever. Ultimately, that is the distinctive factor that I think think about when people say vinyl is back or physical media is back. Because is it really? I don't think it's back in the way that it was. Because remember that buying albums, buying singles, buying music at all, that was the way to listen unless you were, listening to the radio. So we're in an interesting time where I don't know if the music industry really has figured out what to do with regard to paying artists fairly, considering that physical media, while it is definitely growing, of course growing compared to a few years ago, not like 20, 30 years ago, but it's growing again.
I have an interesting statistic for you as well about vinyl growth. I was curious, so I just looked up the numbers. I don't know if you've seen them, but vinyl sales have definitely, obviously, so we're looking back at like the peak of vinyl, which is late 70s, early 80s, basically. This is for the United States as well. We're looking at around 300 million to 350 million unit sales. So that was the peak. This stat from fstoppers.com. Since 2016, vinyl album sales have increased from 13.1 million to 49.6 million in 2023. 224.9 million vinyl records have been purchased since 2016, and this is largely driven by younger buyers who grew up entirely in the era of streaming. So just kind of an interesting statistic. Obviously, yes, we are nowhere near where it was the main form to listen to music. It's a pretty impressive growth to have a technology that's growing so strongly that by all means you could consider technically obsolete.
I think it's a very unique form of physical media too. You're very intentional when you're listening to vinyl records. Like we were talking about, like the process of putting on a vinyl record. And I think younger people especially just want to, in an age where everything is just getting more shitified, I think people want to be more intentional and like connect more with their music. And I think vinyl is an amazing way to do that.
And I want to push back a little bit on the idea that vinyl is obsolete, because I do think that there are a lot of upsides when it comes to vinyl versus streaming, even CDs, and it really is audio fidelity. I mean, it is very case by case. I think vinyl really shines when the music is recorded analog to reels. Everything has a pure analog signal path, because that is just such a pure sound. And I know there are a lot of people who are kind of vinyl snobs when it comes to, oh, you gotta listen to it all analog. You gotta listen to this mobile fidelity pressing from this year because it has the cleanest signal path, and buzzwords like surface noise and tape hiss and stuff like that. But honestly, having listened to a lot of vinyl records on a hi-fi setup for years now, the hype is real. This music sounds more alive. And even CDs, compared to streaming in which you're, taking the data from a server and you're putting it into your ears, CDs are closer to the more pure sound. And I think when it comes to digital recording, often CDs are your best bet to have the most accurate or lively sound. Either that or, looking up the old Pro Tools studio files with lossless tracks. And
I hate Pro Tools.
All my homies hate Pro Tools.
It's an industry standard.
Logic's going to be the new industry standard in about 5 years here.
That'd be nice.
Is it not? Yeah.
No, it's still Pro Tools. 100% it's still Pro Tools. But
interesting.
Separate conversation.
Yeah.
But that's something else to consider, is just there is a bit of a cutoff. Now, sure, people these days are recording things on reel-to-reels, analog signal paths. It does happen, but the majority of people making music these days are recording things on Pro Tools or Ableton or FL Studio or Logic or, I don't know, GarageBand.
Reaper.
It happens. And in those cases, you're taking a digital signal path and you're putting it onto a vinyl record, and that really doesn't yield anything new or expansive, at least from what I've seen. Yet I still have a lot of digitally sourced albums on vinyl. At least for me, it feels like a sort of status symbol to say, I own this album by this artist. Tell me what you think about this. I think in this current year, the people who are actively buying a lot of vinyl records fall into two camps. One is the audiophiles, the people who are way into fidelity and seeking out the best pressing. I feel like that's me. And the other half are a bit younger, who maybe don't even have record players who put the album covers on their walls as decoration.
Yeah, I feel like I see a lot of those, or not a lot of those, but I see enough of them on Instagram and TikTok and whatnot. And it's like, you can do that. You bought the album with your money, but I feel like you're not giving it the full respect that the album deserves. I don't know.
I have a bit of an interesting angle. Here's at least what I see is the truth. Like, physical media in this day and age will always be a secondary means of enjoying anything. It will forever cater to a more niche audience. It will not hit mainstream status of being like the main way you listen to something, at least for the foreseeable future, unless we have some crazy regulations and law changes. It will not, because obviously we're in a community of people that enjoy physical media. We're in a community of people that surround themselves with it. The average person on the street, when you give them that convenience, they will never take it back,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's just the truth of it. So, physical media will always be catering towards a niche audience and a more specific audience. And honestly, maybe that helps them push it out better because you know exactly who your audience is. But it will never go mainstream again. As much as it maybe is seemingly quote unquote mainstream. If you ask somebody, would you rather pay $15 a month to be able to listen to every single album basically ever made outside of a handful, or do you want to pay $10 for this one album and you have to have a physical player to play it? It is a niche audience, and there's nothing wrong with that. People who are enjoying buying products are people who naturally will care more about the music. The only exception to this, and you kind of brought this up, but I don't see this too much. This is a fairly niche thing, but we're getting into a little different conversation, but with stan culture and having to buy all the pressings of an album. I need every colored pressing of this. That's kind of a weird audience that's suddenly in the physical media world now. And while I want to celebrate big artists who are helping revive physical media, like your Adeles and your Taylor Swifts, it also is coming in kind of semi undercutting the rest of the market.
Yeah, because there's so many record presses that are just filled up or just backed up for months because they're too busy pressing The Life of a Showgirl in 20 different colorways. And Adele also.
So I want to know if you guys saw this statistic. I don't recall if it was last year or 2 years ago, the numbers when it came to the best-selling album on vinyl. I think it was 2 years ago at this point. Best-selling album on vinyl was Taylor Swift's Tortured Poets Department, and that sold about 1.5 million units. Pretty good, honestly. But the second highest selling album was Billie Eilish's Hit Me Hard and Soft, 300,000.
Wow.
Interesting.
I think there is a very big divide between the three of us and the people who are buying Tortured Poets Department.
There's nothing wrong with being a Taylor Swift fan if you enjoy the music you enjoy. I'm making a broad generalization here, but the people that are making up a majority of these album sales, you're buying them at Target.
Oh, for sure.
You're not buying them at the secondhand record store.
You're guaranteed to see them at every Target or Walmart. If you go to their record section, you're basically guaranteed to see at least one Taylor Swift album there.
I found another vinyl chart just because I was curious, and I think this one is 2025 rankings. It's kind of hard to tell the last time this was updated, but yeah, Life of a Showgirl 1.6, and then the next one, a short and sweet at 282,000. The drop off is pretty insane.
It's pretty severe. Yeah, I think Taylor Swift, or at least their team, always makes a point. The vinyl is a big part of the release of the album, I think. I always notice whenever they announce it, they usually come out with, we're releasing, there are 4 different colorways, there's all they all have different album covers. I think that's also part of it.
It's become a collector's thing.
It really has.
It's a collector's thing, but musically they all have the same musical content. So I think while it may be helping to bring a resurgence in physical media, I can't help but think that they're really just trying to exploit this market and try to just milk as much money out of their biggest fans as possible.
Yeah, I definitely agree that it's encouraging, this intrinsically capitalistic behavior of you should own as much as you can. I have an interesting question for you guys that's a little different in topic, but I wanted to make sure we got to it. As you guys know, one of my favorite albums that's come out this year is Johnny Blue Skies and the Dark Clouds, Mutiny After Midnight. The man behind Johnny Blue Skies, he's not a huge name, but he isn't small and underground. He's been around in the industry for a bit. They took a very interesting approach with this album of it is only available on CD and vinyl, and it has an exclusivity deal on iTunes, not Apple Music, iTunes. So if you want to listen to this album in full, they have one song that's available on YouTube. If you want to listen to it in full, you have to pay at least $10 for it. This is an interesting approach. This is something that at least I haven't seen before. I'm sure some other artists, I think the closest thing that I know to that behavior is like the underground black metal scene. This isn't an uncommon thing for them to do, but they're still, that's a separate culture that thrives on being unknown and underground. This is an artist who by all means is trying to maximize their success in a certain way. So I'm kind of curious, do you think we'll see this trend of maybe these more mid-sized artists going, you know what, I'm putting it all physically, and maybe one exclusivity deal, but you still have to buy it. You have to be intentional with your purchase. You're taking that gamble. I bought it and I was like, I only knew one song from the album. I was like, what if I don't like it? Luckily I liked it though.
I think it's really interesting. I don't know if you've seen how Mutiny After Midnight is performing, but it's performing very well. And I think that sort of exclusivity where you have to buy in, it was the standard now, but now it feels like this sort of exclusive club that you get to be a part of. Like, I bought Mutiny After Midnight and I feel special about it. And that's really interesting.
I sure do.
I want to compare it to the album The Gospel According To by Makami, which has a tangentially similar rollout, only a little bit though, in that it was only released on vinyl. It had like 40 copies, maybe fewer, and they were each priced at about $3,000. In that case, it feels more like an art project than an actual album rollout. But again, it's that feeling of exclusivity. Like, I have this thing and I had to work for it. Now, sure, you had to work for the money to buy it, but still, you had to put something in to listen to this album.
I think people are getting fed up with streaming services as a whole too, with how low it pays their artists. With AI becoming a looming threat, people are leaving that service, even if it's just like Bandcamp, or just turning away from the subscription service model of listening to music and letting people have their music, whether it be through a digital file or through a physical release like CD or vinyl. I think people want to be driven more away from streaming services. I've even seen videos on people setting up their old iPods with custom software, using that as a daily driver for listening to music.
One interesting thought about this whole resurgence, and I think we have a unique angle on this because we're both old enough that like I remember when buying music on iTunes or physically was the standard, I still remember like as a kid like begging my mom to like buy certain songs and albums on iTunes. And I remember hearing glimmers of this like this is a site called Spotify and you can just pay and you can just listen to anything. And then more showed up and Apple Music came out.
I remember being amazed when Spotify came out.
It was this weird thing of like, because I was like, whoa, it's like how Netflix, you could just pay and watch anything. And now we have this with music. So like we came from the angle of like we were just old enough, and like I'm sure this cutoff like it probably is only a couple years after us, of like we still remember the standard of taking a bit of a gamble on an album. And I think this comes back to Mutiny After Midnight. Like when I found out I could only listen to the full album by purchasing it just ate at me for days and days, because I liked the one song that was on YouTube, but I still didn't know what the rest of the album sounded like. But I was like, I just gotta know. I just have to know what the rest of this album sounds like. So I think it's bringing back, like you said earlier, like the exclusive club feeling of like, I own this, I've heard it, you gotta pay.
Yeah, it's like this act of resistance towards the direction that mainstream music distribution is going towards.
It's better for the artists, because it's like $10 for an album. You're making more off one person purchasing that album than like 100 people listening to the album in full, which sounds absolutely insane when you say it out loud, that you make more money from one person. I bought the album. I have listened to it a good handful of times. I love to throw it on. I have given Johnny Blue Sky is probably more from that $10 than a lot of other artists that are in my most listened to like artist list. It's insane.
I remember when King Gizzard dropped their stuff from Spotify, they made their entire discography on Bandcamp, just name your price. And I think for a while, their albums took up the entirety of the top selling album charts. Even if it's like a name your own price, people still want to support the artists by buying their music, you know, especially with King Gizzard. It's like very fan base. It has its own community and fan base, which I think helps them a lot. But I think it also, you know, proves that it can work, like the digital distribution like that, I think can work without necessarily relying on Spotify.
I think it is possible to make that shift, but I think King Gizzard has an advantage of being an established band who has a very loyal fan base. The thing is, when it comes to 99.9% of people making music, that doesn't seem like a surefire shot ever, because people are always going to take the path of least resistance. And this always comes down to Napster, because Napster was the breaking point. Napster is when it all went down, because when Napster came out, the perceived value of music became nothing, because you could just download everything for free. Like Spotify changed the game in that they basically did what Napster did, but they had the backing from the big music labels. The fact that physical media or paying for music at all is still a thing is in some way a miracle, but I do think it makes sense because it's pivoted. It's no longer a method to listen to music outright. I think especially when it comes to people like Taylor Swift or all the people at the big box stores like Target and Walmart that are selling these vinyl records, it's merchandise. That's what it is now. It is a status symbol to show your devotion to an artist or an album. And sure, there are the exceptions. I think we're the exceptions. But still, if you see who's buying physical media, especially posting it on social media, it's all about just having it and showing other people that you have it. Like, I've always sent you guys a text in the group chat like, look, I got this new record, because it's cool. It's fun to have. It feels special.
It's fun to show off the record, and records are special. Having that just tangible, just huge album cover in your hands and holding in your hands is just an immaculate experience. The only vinyl I don't think I will ever open is this signed Mercurial World.
All right, that's signed. That's kind of a fair exception. It is signed.
It deliberately is a collector's item.
I think we're kind of getting back to a good point that we brought up at the start. You know, if there's a takeaway from anything, vinyls, especially because we're mainly talking about vinyls. They're a niche audience. People will always take the path of least resistance. So like if you're a musical artist, you're listening to this and you're small, you're trying to figure it out. So naturally you're listening to the Harmolodics podcast.
Yeah.
As tempting as it may be to pull something like a Sturgill Simpson, as tempting as that is, don't. Because we're in an age where people will listen to anything. Your music will be forgotten about so quickly. So obviously you have to put a lot of effort into making music good. You don't have the backing of someone like Sturgill Simpson. People don't know you who you are. They don't care. So you kind of have to deal with the thing of like, you got to just put your music everywhere. If you're in the music industry for money, you're in the wrong industry. Even bands that are touring and doing festivals are still barely profiting. But what it is good, you should have CDs and stuff of that because you build a fan base. And I think if anyone's willing to buy it physically, they're going to be willing to talk about it. And that's honestly the biggest thing right now.
Yeah, I think making music accessible should be the focus. And that includes making it accessible to people with streaming services, which is 98%.
In many respects, it feels like the music industry is kind of bleeding at this point. Like, record labels are not making back the advances that they give to artists for albums. Tours might be able to break even if it's Taylor Swift, but we're seeing Blue Dot Fever, and we can talk about that in a later episode. I think the most surefire bet if you're a musical artist to make some amount of profit is to like do a commercial. You know, Billie Eilish was doing ads for Calvin Klein at the same time as she was sweeping the Grammys.
Olivia Rodrigo's music is in a credit card commercial right now. She's probably actually making a ridiculous amount from that. It's an American Express card. She's probably making a crazy amount for that. Was probably a huge deal.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a whole other part of making money off music is sync licensing.
If you're a fan of music and you actually genuinely care about the artist artists that you listen to, buy their merch, buy their albums. Even better, if you're gonna buy their merch, buy it directly from them. As much as I love buying concert merch, the venues like to take a huge cut of merch sales. It can depend on the venue and stuff, but buy directly from the band. It's the best way to support your favorite artists. I really should work on that, but if you like your favorite artists, even listen, everyone has different financial situations. I will never guilt trip somebody for not buying something, because I don't know where you are in your life. If you have the money and you like music, go buy that t-shirt, go buy that CD, go buy that vinyl.
If you don't have the money to support your artists, even just talking about it helps, because maybe they will be persuaded to support their artists themselves, and just talking to other people about it grows the music by itself, you know. But definitely supporting the music by buying it directly or buying merch helps artists the most.
I think it's interesting that all these justifications, although that makes it seem worse than it is, but all these reasons for going physical for music is so different compared to why people are going physical for things like movies. Because that is very different, because the path of least resistance when it comes to the film and TV industry seems to be getting more resistant as time goes on. They don't have a Spotify across all these music streamers, because Spotify's the big one, but you guys use Apple Music. I use Amazon Music. I'm one of the 4 people that do. But there's Pandora.
Who still uses Pandora?
Nobody.
There's YouTube Music.
There's YouTube,
Tidal,
Bandcamp, but that's kind of its own thing.
Bandcamp's its own thing.
But regardless of what music streamer you're using, you have basically the same catalog of everything. Like, there are exceptions, like King Gizzard off Spotify. For some reason, Garth Brooks is only on Amazon, so take that. But you're basically getting everything when you sign up for these music streamers. Whereas if you want to watch a movie, you better hope that you have the right streaming service. And I think that's the big reason that physical media for movies isn't as much as a status symbol as much as it is the only way to watch some of these things.
Some movies are just not on streaming or not available digitally. You really need to seek out the physical copy of it.
It feels like the one area, like the one industry that I feel like physical media is still almost, I don't know if I'll say the majority still, but a large go-to is video games. I think we kind of sometimes maybe forget because we're mainly on PC, but like we still all own consoles. There's, you know, the digital game store is still a very big thing, but like, you know, you buy a lot of cartridges still from Nintendo. They're still selling disc models of everything. Like, video games is the one industry where that might be the safest almost, especially with companies doing backwards compatibility is a big thing. So video games is almost this weird other industry, because listen, even with backwards compatibility, that like you can still emulate anything on your computer, basically anything up until like the most recent generation, and even those are getting cracked pretty quickly.
And even things like Game Pass are making like games super accessible digitally. It's nowhere like near the level of like Netflix or like Spotify and other music streaming services in terms of like the catalog, but there's still a lot of quality games on Game Pass, and it's kind of a hard deal to pass up. And it's not killing physical media entirely, because sure, you can buy it digitally, but a lot of the times it's cheaper to buy physically. Well, it might be changing now because with Nintendo's new pricing model where the physical is more expensive than digital, but a lot of times, especially for used and older games, physical is the way to go to replay those.
But it is interesting just because video games have a barrier of entry. As good as emulation can get, it's not going to be 100% accurate. So like, if you really want to play the original version of this game, you have to seek out this system that plays only that game. That's something that you can't really say is indicative of music or movies.
Video games are just this dynamic medium.
Yeah, you're not going to put a vinyl record on a turntable and it's going to spit it out and say, nope, not compatible.
You need a Dreamcast play this.
Yeah, sorry. It helps that vinyl records are still being made. If you want to go and buy Fleetwood Mac's Rumors, you can, but good luck trying to get Chibi Robo.
I think the Switch Online is bringing a lot of their retro catalog. I think it's in a good place right now. It's not obviously not perfect, but I think with the addition of GameCube games, it's a very slow process of building up the catalog, but I think there's a lot on there already. And it's only a 20, well, I guess if you're getting the expansion, it's a $50 a year purchase, but you're still getting a pretty decent amount. But obviously it's not perfect. There's a lot of games that are missing, and there's a lot of options and just features that are missing from like Dolphin or other PC emulators. You're really only using Switch Online for that convenience, and that kind of goes back into music streaming, because I think convenience is a huge part of accessing music, whether it be through streaming or emulation. If you want to consume this specific piece of media, you're gonna take the path of least resistance to that, and that's usually through digital means.
Streaming, it's there. It's easy to access. Everybody knows what it is, how to use it. In the same way that if you're going to try to get into, say, Nintendo, you're going to get a Switch 2. You're not going to get a Wii at this point in time because you have to go seek it out because they're not making it anymore.
But it's like, overall, yeah, physical media, I'd say the niche audience is growing. It will never be mainstream again. That's just the hard truth of it. But the niche audience is growing. But just remember, if buying isn't owning, then piracy isn't stealing. Anyways, we've had a very lovely conversation today. Thank you all so much for listening. Make sure to follow the Harmolodics podcast. Let's go around the horn, say if there's anywhere else that we could find you guys. Are you guys up to anything exciting? Do we have any fun projects? Beb, we'll start with you.
You can find me on YouTube. My username is Bep. On TikTok, my username is Bep. Interesting projects. I'm working on an album called Mr. Pretty. That's what I'm doing right now.
I don't have any personal projects that I'm working on. Best place to find me is right here on the Harmolodics channel.
And that just leaves it with me. My name is Chris. You can find me on TikTok at Catacombine. The YouTube channel is also getting up and running here shortly. But once again, thank you so much. Follow Harmolodics. Make sure to follow us everywhere. We will be back shortly with another exciting deep dive into another musical topic. If you have any ideas, make sure to let us know. Do we have any closing thoughts?
I do like physical media. I like listening to vinyl records, and I just think it's cute and a bit nostalgic.
Physical media forever. My experiences with physical media I will always hold very near and dear to my heart. I think it's going to change throughout the years, but I think people are always going to seek it out. I don't think it's ever going to go away. I think it'll always be around in one form or another. We saw the resurgence of vinyl. Maybe we'll see the resurgence of 8-tracks and laser discs. I'm quite optimistic about that.
And as always, we're buying applesauce. Yep, that's how I'm ending it. I'm hitting end on record. That's...
Yeah.